Good evening, everyone. As I say, we've got Craig's in chat. Hopefully, some more will be joining soon into the chat. But hopefully, everyone's had a good weekend. Welcome to the Monday night stream. And tonight we're joined by Thomas of Exotics Keeper magazine.
Hi, Phil. Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. Cheers for coming on. Hopefully, like I say, hopefully more will be joining in chat. But we'll get with. Well, do you want to give yourself a bit of an introduction into who you are and what Exotics Keeper magazine is?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Tom. I'm the manager of Exotics Keeper. The magazine itself is it's a British publication, comes out every month, and it focuses on reptiles, amphibians, inverts, fishes, and mammals actually as well. Probably leans more towards the reptile and amphibian side of things, but ultimately, all kind of exotic pets. It's been going for 4 years now, just over 4 years. Currently available in the UK, available digitally internationally. And we've done a few little bits over the years as well that, in terms of digital content, we've done some YouTube videos and some sort of mini documentary on crested geckos as well. So plenty of content out there for people wherever they're tuning in from.
That's cool. Yeah, we'll certainly dive into the magazine and stuff and how it came in, how you came involved with it. But I suppose, well, first off, in terms of background, what's your sort of background when it comes to exotics?
Yeah, I mean, I've just always been fascinated by reptiles and amphibians, really, since I was like a kid. So, as long as I can remember. I mean, I had my first leopard gecko when it's actually for my 10th birthday. A long time ago now. And then since then, sort of my other big passion is traveling. So my sort of academic career went down the journalism route, and I went and did an English degree and sort of did quite a lot of traveling during uni and then afterwards as well. So a lot of that was also obviously around finding reptiles and things like that. And I set up a blog just for personal interest, really, documenting some of the encounters that I'd had with different reptiles and amphibians along my different travels, and then that sort of materialized. And then this when EK was established about just over 4 years ago, they were looking for an editor, and that's where I got on board, and now I manage the whole project. So in a sort of full circle moment, actually now I'm doing quite a lot of traveling with the job itself, which marries up all my interests quite nicely. But it's reptiles are really my sort of passion. I absolutely love herpetology, but I'm not an academic. I didn't study herpetology. I've just been quite fortunate to spend quite a bit of time out in the field, and then obviously telling the stories and sort of publishing the work of other people, experienced hobbyists and breeders and stuff that really dedicate their lives to individual species. I'm really fortunate to sort of get to sit and talk to them for many hours about subjects that I enjoy, that I'm really interested in. And over the years, it's kind of snowballed, I guess.
No, that's really cool. So, sounds like it started a similar way to me. I started off with a leopard gecko when I was a kid. When I was 7, I got my first ever leopard gecko, and then spiraled from there.
Yeah, exactly. That's the gateway gecko, isn't it? Yes.
It certainly was, but back then, and certainly husbandry has changed a hell of a lot since, and for the better.
Absolutely,
because mine was sort of mid-90s and sort of thing, and it was very much seen as sort of like that's the best beginner starter reptile for you. And at that time it was like, all it needs is a 2-foot viv, and you don't need to put any light in there. You just need to heat man a bit of sand, and jobs are good, and there you go. That's what you need. And it's like, and nowadays you look back and go, oh god.
Exactly. I mean, it's crazy how quickly everything's sort of like grown and changed, and it for the best. I mean, but you can understand why people are, some beginner keepers are so like conflicted, because you only have to speak to somebody, not even a whole generation really older than that, but somebody who was maybe into or extremely experienced 10, 15, 20 years ago, it looks completely different to how things are now. So while it's so much better for the animals, and we can understand that when people are out there looking for resources, you can't blame them for struggling. There's a lot of different ideas floating around, and I guess that's one of the good things about EK is that I can sort of look back at the way I kept Leo, which was really, really well for the time, and then also be able to sort of push this information out there about how people should be doing the best by their animals at this point in my life, which is quite nice. So it's just nice to see everything really progressing.
That's it. And it goes, it's not just the reptiles, but it's the same with the amphibians and the inverts and just everything in general. It's all, it comes on leaps and bounds and changes so quickly for the better. But it's also sometimes when you look back so drastic. I mean, compared to Ryback, I remember going to talk with Tel Hicks, and where he was talking about literally how the hobby's changed in his lifetime, and that right at the beginning, he was right at the forefront of it. He was one of the founders of the IHS, and kind of was like one of the biggest innovations at the sort of early stages of his reptile sort of keeping stuff was a plastic tree that you put in a tank kind of thing. And it was like, this was exciting because that it was like, and that was innovative for sort of the 60s kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we look at sort of nowadays, and it's all sort of, various LED lights coming out and stuff, and things and all sorts of things coming out, which is the equipment gets me as excited as the animals itself.
100%. I mean, that's the thing, like, as everything's moving towards naturalistic vivariums and enclosures and stuff like that, it almost opens more questions. Like I'll be talking at the BHS AHH conference this year about just sort of some of the wild observations, some of the stories that I've written for EK whilst out in the field in different locations, and then but also like how we actually incorporate that into a captive environment and what we can learn from that. Because whilst everyone's sort of going like back in the 80s or whatever, when it was like there was a standard way of doing things, and it was make sure the animal survives, and see what we can learn from it, and see how we can sort of patch that knowledge together in a relatively sterile environment. Now we're trying to create the most natural thing possible, which I think I 100% support, because I think it's just got so much opportunity. But what aspects of the natural world are we trying to replicate? Are we trying to create, a 2 meter squared box of habitat, or are we trying to condense a whole habitat into a 2 meter squared box? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different things to consider, and getting that balance is all a learning curve. So it's an exciting time to be involved in exotics keeping generally. There's so much scope to learn more, whilst also, some of these vivariums and terrariums and stuff just look fantastic as well. It's really nice to actually, like, I've got a big sort of showpiece sort of poison frog terrarium, and it's excellent. It sits nicely in the living room and that sort of thing. And I guess back in the day, it probably wasn't. They certainly didn't look like they do now. So it makes it a bit more sort of easy. You can sort of fit it into your own sort of lifestyle a little bit easier these days.
Well, that's it. I think it might have been on Riddler's channel when he had Tony of RIK on. He was saying like the advent of the glass terrarium and really like Exoterra bringing up their naturalistic glass terrariums and stuff, and making it a kind of a sleek thing that makes a decorative thing in the lounge. Really, sort of spearheaded that kind of movement kind of thing of like going, oh, we can make statement pieces with this and make a beautiful looking enclosure. A bit like an aquascaped fish tank, but for reptiles and amphibians. And then of course, and the Dart Frog world being like the forefront of sort of bioactive and naturalistic and doing all that sort of thing. Going, look, we can have these jewels in our living rooms kind of thing, and enjoy them as much as fish keepers enjoy their fish.
Exactly. Yeah, it becomes more engaging. Like people want to ask questions about, like I think every delivery person that's ever come to my door has gone, "Oh, what are you keeping in there?" And it's like suddenly it becomes like it opens those sort of conversations. And whereas I think zoos have always been at the forefront of wanting to engage the general public, well, they have to engage the general public, and that's one of their big missions to, and having a naturalistic terrarium help them do that, and has done for many, many years. I think actually, even just as hobbyist keepers, we're opening new conversations to people that would otherwise, when they see a slice of an ecosystem, there's questions to be asked and how things fit together. And, you can marry up a lot of different skills under this umbrella of herpetoculture or exotics keeping, which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all a journey of doing it and stuff. And you do one enclosure and you go, "Oh, I'll do another one now, and I can do it better."
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
It becomes very addictive, and then after a few months, you're like, "Oh, I want to tear that down now and redo it," and sort of thing like, I want to try this plant now with this or whatever.
Yeah, and even like enclosure sizes and stuff, that's one thing where it's, having that, because everyone knows that they get the bug and they want to keep building, actually encouraging new keepers to understand the principles of what they need to know about lighting and heating and how that is affected by space, but ultimately go in, get the biggest terrarium you could possibly get, because you're going to end up wanting to build some crazy thing in it or something eventually. So yeah, it's like the whole sort of mindset. I mean, obviously there's different people who have different restrictions and limitations and stuff and have different motives for their hobby, but broadly that move towards this naturalistic kind of replication is really nice to see.
Yeah, definitely. So, with the magazine started about sort of 4 years ago. I think I remember I got the first issue, I believe, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like during that time of of us all being shut away and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was were you involved with it from the very beginning, or did you come on board kind of?
Yeah, so I came in about sort of 3 months into it. So the magazine was sort of conceptualized actually by Tony at RRK. There was a conversation between publishers, Peregrine, and to be fair, I wasn't here at that point. And then there was a few months in, and that something changed. So I took the sort of editor role at that point. We had a designer that was sort of full time with us, and it was sort of managed. So there's a few people sort of working on the project at that time, and most of my sort of role at that point was sort of writing as various articles, interviewing people, and really implementing, because I used to write for newspapers before that point. So all my skills were sort of, I guess, like more in like interviewing, sort of basic sort of journalism. So just telling people stories. I didn't want to go in there with any kind of level of any understanding whatsoever. It needed to sort of be completely neutral. So I was interviewing a lot of people, writing up the stories and putting that out there. Over a couple of years, then I started doing more sort of field stuff. So then I could go and join an organization or do some herping. And then I'd also be commissioning pieces from other people. So the content sort of changed. I still write the bulk of the articles now, but my responsibility generally has shifted to, you'll see me doing bits on socials with cobras and stuff like that, and then you'll see me doing a YouTube video about crested geckos from the net. So I wear a lot of hats with this project, but I've basically seen it grow since the very start. And that's where we're at now, really.
That's cool. Yeah, because I was going to sort of like, but if you want to forgive me, may not know the answer of like why it was decided to bring out a magazine, especially in this sort of day and age when so much it is digital, sort of thing. And I mean, I love tactile things. I love actual holding the thing in my hand and stuff, and if it's a magazine, reading the magazine rather than reading it online, sort of thing. And I remember the days of Reptilian magazine and you know, and then going on to practical reptile keeping and stuff. So when this, you know, was sort of coming, I was like, you know, oh yeah, you know, I haven't read a magazine on reptiles for ages. Let's start sort of looking into that. So I was all like, yeah, one question was sort of, yeah, maybe knew why they sort of, you know, wanted to bring out a magazine.
Yeah, again, I wasn't there for those initial conversations, but I know it came about during COVID. So at the time, the company that publishes the magazine was basically giving like relief sort of insects to zoos to stop obviously the impact of COVID, and try to offer some support really for the industry and for zoos. And I know that EK had something to do with that, some form of like raising funds for you know, zoos and businesses and stuff that needed to keep their animals fed at the time that you know, businesses were obviously suffering. I don't know all the ins and outs. Like I say, you know, I came in probably 3 months into the sort of magazine's inception. So can't tell you exactly, I'm afraid. Yeah.
That's fair one, actually. But as I said, the digital version really hits his bars. He can read it, breaks at work and unwind a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's the benefit of having a digital version is that you can just have it on your phone or whatever and just read little bits when you want and stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it. There's it's sort of accessible, and we are actually working on a new website as we speak. In fact, it will be a matter of weeks that that will then go live, and the digital versions just look so much nicer as well. We've been using different platforms and stuff to try and host them and give people access to the digital versions, and you know, jump in there and have a little flick through when they want. But hopefully this interface, just from what I've seen, looks much nicer for you to be able to jump in and out and pick things up where you left off and that kind of thing. It's just so much nicer. But yeah, I'm glad that people are enjoying it for sure. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no, it's good. So, in terms of, for people that perhaps have never read EK, or they might be thinking, you know, what sort of things that you do go? Is it purely just husbandry in there, or is there, you know, a bit of a mixture of things?
Yeah, well, like a massive mix, to be honest. And it's something that's taken us a little while to refine, I guess, because a lot of the feedback we get is some people go, absolutely love the fact that you've, you know, done an article on, I don't know, for example, the guys at Halesowen College were working with ground cuscus, like a species of marsupial, I think, from New Guinea, possibly North Australia as well, but really niche mammal. And I was like, that's a fantastic story. And it's an institution, British institution, that obviously the relation with the National Centre for Reptile Welfare, it's great to sort of see what they're doing anyway. So that worked really nicely. Whilst then, you know, you've got other people that might be thinking, well, I don't really want to read about some obscure mammal from, you know, the other side of the world. I'm really into my, I don't know, particular species or morphs or something, or a breeding sort of community of this one species. And so you've got to sort of get a bit of a balance of everything. I mean, generally we do at least 2, if not 3, solid like breeding focused breeding / keeping focused articles with at least one quite specialist species, one that's could be beginner, could be more intermediate, but ultimately is a popular species. There's always, or 90% of the time, and it's something that I always try to get right, but obviously sometimes content shifts around, but we always have a conservation story in there. That can sometimes be captive breeding in a zoo, which sort of then crosses both sort of sides of it. But also, if there's some field work happening, particularly herpetology related ones, because again, and with inverts as well, these are often sort of quite marginalized subjects when it comes to talking in the media about conservation. Then despite, you know, amphibians being so imperiled on a global basis, the media output there, it just doesn't add up for the actual danger that these species face. So being able to cover them stories is really good, and I find that fascinating as well, because you get to talk to really, really passionate people that have obviously spent many years working on a project that actually is like, of global sort of importance in terms of, potentially species going extinct and things like that. And they're usually so keen and eager to talk to you about this particular topic, because again, when it comes to reptiles, people just aren't covering it in the way that they really should be. If it was a mammal or something a bit more charismatic. So some of them conversations are really, really nice. And then we have birds, we have mammals, we have inverts. I'm also probably after reptiles and amphibians, inverts probably come up more frequently, trying to get maybe one article in at least every other issue. But again, it's as somebody who's interested in herpetology and has been to a lot of the herpetology conferences and some of the shows and built up quite a big network of sort of herpers, zookeepers, private keepers. When you then start trying to find the experts in a particular field or something like fish and inverts, it takes a little bit longer. So we're always keen for people from other keeping backgrounds who might see EK magazine on the shelves with it being chameleon one week, a snake the next week, some frogs the next week. If you're working with a particular invert or or a fish or something that you really think there needs to be a bit more literature out there about them, or you've had an interesting observation or success in some capacity, definitely reach out to us, because we are always looking for guest writers and those sort of insights as well.
And then I know was it the latest issue? A friend of the channel, friend of most of the people in chat, is Tim Baxter of Tim Baxter's Just Scorpions. An article on scorpions. Who's he's fantastic with his scorpions, as Tim.
That was great. I hadn't actually met him in person before, but Lee pointed me in the right direction, and we sat on the phone for a couple of hours, had a nice chat, and you end up creating a really fascinating. Like, I'm learning along the way, finding it absolutely fascinating. The article itself was a solid article, and nice chat, So
Tim's absolutely fantastic. We all love Tim. He's certainly up there as probably one of, if not the best person in the UK for scorpions at the moment.
Brilliant,
that's nice. Bart's nice one. Is actually a magazine for people by people.
100%. I mean, that's the thing. It's a large-ish community, but it's also still very niche. Whether it's reptile keeping or invert keeping or whatever, they might all be small communities, but I'd like to think that we all exist under this sort of happy umbrella. But
there's always things that can cross over between the different ones, whether you're just an invert person keeping nothing but inverts. There's things within the reptile and the amphibian worlds that invert people can use with their inverts. Same way as we can look at the aquatic side of things and see what aquascapes are doing to influence what we do with our terrariums and stuff. I'm always watching various aquascapers and like, oh, how do you do that? And then you're like, right, can that be done on a terrestrial scale kind of thing? How they set up beautiful aquascapes, and be like, right, can we do that with a terrascape kind of thing?
Except usually the beautiful moss that you had envisioned tends to die after 2 weeks.
That's it. That's only annoying thing, but it's always like, can we look at that and see? And I'm always about mainstream media not really portraying like things like amphibian conservation and stuff. That's been so true for so many years. And so I remember a few years ago, I went to the Durrell lectures in London for amphibian conservation, and this guy was talking about like amphibians in the media, and was saying how like amphibians are one of the first bits of wildlife you tend to come across as a child, find a frog or toad in the garden. But by the time you're adult, so many people just don't care about them anymore. And then the media, he pulled up a headline from somewhere where it was like, X amount of species of amphibian go extinct within this year. Media yawns.
It's
boring. Who cares? And it's like, they're so keystone and stuff.
100%. And even like with chytrid, I think chytrid's already it's already impacted something for like 500 plus species of amphibian, and 80 have gone extinct because of this. Like, it's the most widespread, most disastrous pathogen for biodiversity that I think ever, or what we know of. And yet, like, there was a little bit of coverage a few years ago. I remember seeing bits and bobs sort of drip fed through the BBC here and there, like little bits. But considering the scale of what it is, people just aren't that bothered. And it's down to us as people that love reptiles and amphibians, whether you're a conservationist, as a zoologist, a hobbyist, a brand new pet keeper, or somebody that's just interested in them. Like, it falls on our shoulders really to inspire other people and actually get them to just care,
Yeah, absolutely. There's other that's anyone who posts on social media, especially if you've got amphibians, it's post about Chytrid, post about any conservation and stuff. But and you know, thing like me, because I work in a zoo and stuff, and you will see, somewhere will do something great with whether it be amphibian or reptile, whatever sort of actual conservation, and it'll hardly get reported about, and then you'll see the media go absolutely so crazy because someone's bred a liger or something.
Yeah.
And we'll be like, oh, this is fantastic for conservation. You're like, there's no conservation value whatsoever. That's not conservation sort of thing. But always see, I remember, I think it was a few years ago, I think it was BBC as well, and it was like BBC Breakfast or something, there was like somewhere in Russia bred like the first ever white ligers, and they're like, oh, this is fantastic for conservation. And it's like, no, it's not. There's nothing about it. What are you on about? Sort of thing. But then, like, somewhere like Chester or London Zoo or any other zoo breeding something incredibly endangered. No, we don't care about that.
No, exactly. And it's like the some people, like most journalists, well, they're not sort of even that's interested in science, let alone understanding the sort of complexities of subspecies and things like that, and locality conservation more broadly. So the way that, like, even like a positive story can be sort of spun in a negative way, and like and potentially negative story that you probably wouldn't want to shout about too much ends up sort of just being completely misguided and pushed out, because there's just so much context whenever you talk about conservation in any capacity. There's so much context that needs to sort of be pushed across, and I think that's an important thing. Zoos, some of the big zoos are really great because obviously their press releases are so like factual and to the point, but it still doesn't stop. For example, like last week I went down to London to cover their Darwin's frogs that they've got down there. Fantastic story. There's some really incredible work happening there, but like the big catchy headline is male frogs get pregnant. Do you know what I mean? And it's cool. You're not leaving that out of the story, but it's also like, this was like potentially like these animals have had to be rescued from another country because there's a pathogen that's wiping out the entire species. But it's like, what's going to capture the general attention, or the general public's attention quicker? Pregnant male frogs. Wow. Like, and great, they've got a good story, but what about the frogs, the male frogs that can't get pregnant? Do you know what I mean? They eventually, if they've not got enough of a spin, a bit of a sort of hook to the story, it's it can lackluster a little bit when it's published on sort of mainstream media platforms.
Yeah, I saw a headline perhaps today, perhaps just saw a stream about the Darwin frogs, and it's something like something about male frogs fly 7,000 miles to give birth. And it was like,
not quite what was happening, but I mean, not completely false.
But headlines of that are always going to get people to be like, what's this? And then want to read it. So you sort of, I don't know, a little bit why I do sort of headlines like that, even though to us it makes no sense whatsoever. You're like, what?
Even sometimes, like when you're going, that a news story's broken on another platform, and then you can almost see like little holes in it where it's like So I don't know. So for example, like the IUCN statuses are always like capitalized. So you know that if a species is listed as critically endangered, it's critically endangered. But if you could happily write that this species is threatened for just about any status of a reptile or species because it is threatened by something. And then sometimes that gets a bit lost in translation with news stories because it's like, oh, this critically endangered species, but it's lowercase. It's not actually critically endangered by the IUCN standards. So then you're like, oh, well, that's not that critically endangered. Or they'll go, first time, because, for example, a zoo will put out a press release, first time this species has ever been bred in captivity. And it's like, well, first time it's been registered on ZIMS and is it probably is a zoo first, but also hobbyists have been breeding it for decades. And there's actually quite a lot of them around. And there's no point in picking at that. But if if people pick up a press release and then that gets translated into a journalist has picked that up and then another journalist has picked up the story from them, eventually you've got something that it's quite far removed from the actual reality of things.
That's it. I think again, Jess had to like create something earlier or last year. There's like a story about the venom rat spiders that were released sort of years ago that a few zoos got involved with and stuff, and this one really somewhere was like saying something, so I just had to put out their own thing like it's like here's our feel like what actually happened kind of thing, because like there's like one news story that was like trying to almost like insinuate that Chester Zoo were releasing these giant non-native spiders into the UK, and they're like, what kind of thing? It was like, no. They're our largest native spider. So
that's it. Whenever there's a spider involved, the journalist is going, right, how big can we make it? How much of a threat can we put killer in front of it? Like,
it was literally like, it was like, headline like, similar to like, killer giant spiders released by zoos sort of thing. It's all like, no, that's not what happened at all. Considering that also they were like juveniles that were being released and stuff, and it all came because a new survey was done on the site that where they were released of how they were doing. Sort of thing, because once VARs had done what they could do, naturally done what they could do. I think then got the RSPB involved to just do the survey the site and stuff, and they were like, "Yep, they're doing well." Essentially, doing well. We got some like 10,000 breeding females now that we found, something like that. It was like, absolutely fantastic, and then suddenly that gets taken by
and it's like,
other media that goes, "Oh my god, let's put this," and then people get angry about it and kind of get the wrong information.
100%, yeah.
So with your he's just put about some with the Raspberry's original story said the size of baby rats, and the stories after said giant spiders the size of rats. That's it.
That's like, one, isn't it?
They don't get that big at all.
Compare it to something in that ballpark and then just blow it well out the water.
That's it. And people then freaking out, and even had people that to my zoo and coming to my bug talk being like, "What's this about?" And I'm like, right, like they don't get that big. They're not deadly. They're not going to come into your house.
I was talking to Chris Newman at the NCIW a little while ago about basically all their stowaway data. They've been getting loads of stowaways from all different species. Really interesting stuff. Really tells you a lot about how resilient some of these species are and all that sort of thing. But I couldn't help it. Like the most commonly imported or accidentally imported sort of stowaway reptile is saw scale vipers. And it's like, they are like, that is a journalist's dream, because actually the most common stowaway snake, snake species is actually one of the deadliest in the world and can kill you. Like, that is any journalist's dream. I don't really blame them for running with that that sort of headline. So there are a few cases where I think actually, fair enough, you can ham it up a little bit if the data's there.
Yeah, definitely. So, do you get those? those things. And no, surveys are certainly interesting. Get a few that have been handling over the years at the park and stuff. And some places like, how the hell has this thing survived? What's happened? Sort of thing. I remember years ago, someone brought a little lacertid lizard that they found in their parachute in their washing machine. When they took their parachute out the washing, they laundered their parachute, took it out, and this little lacertid came out of it, and they're like, what? Sort of thing.
I'm confused by every other word in that in those sentences. So
little baby lacertid is like, how the hell has that survived that?
And are you meant to wash parachutes? Is that like
it was completely random. I was like, what the hell is happening here? So I was like, I'll take it, but because it was like, it's not a native lacertid, so I'll take it.
That's bizarre. I bet you couldn't even start with questions like, where do you start?
And then various things like scorpions. Someone found a scorpion in their bedroom 2 weeks after they got back from Cyprus.
Oh, okay.
And then it was like, Luna was like, this is one you don't want to be stung by. Sort of thing. So like, not a deadly one, but like, you would regret it. So certainly regret being stung by it.
You'd have a bad day.
Nasty time. So I was like, oh yeah, that's a Misobuphus. It's not quite as bad as a Buphid, but it's nearly there. Thing. And various other things like that just come over. And not too far. It was like I think it was like an onion farm or importers. They imported a bunch of onions from like Egypt, and as they were like unloading them, out came an Egyptian cobra.
No way. That is crazy.
And then it's like, oh.
Imagine that shock.
Unloading, that pops, and you're like, oh god. So unfortunately, the workers there, they killed the snake before anyone had got to it, sort of thing, out of panic. Sort of thing. But it's all like, who would have been able to take that at the time? I don't know, because like they just rang the local shop to them who don't deal with DWAs at all, and they're just all like,
rocks thinking you got a little wall lizard in there, and you got an Egyptian cobra to handle. Like,
it's a bit of a difference.
But,
we'll move on to your travels. You see, you like doing traveling now, doing sort of traveling with EK and various things. Where sort of some of the places they sort of travel to, and to see what things you've seen there.
I've been quite lucky to travel quite a lot. So before I started with EK, I traveled around quite a bit of Europe, and went to live in Australia. Actually, I had a trip around Southeast Asia before that point, but then I went to move to Australia after uni, and stopped in Indonesia and sort of went over to Komodo on the way there. So nice. That was like a real sort of pivotal moment for me, because at that time I was just dedicated to school and uni. The reptile sort of thing, it was a pipe dream at that point to work with reptiles and amphibians. I'd gone down a English sort of route. I'd followed what I was good at in school, and but didn't really explore any kind of science subjects, because just followed what I was good at rather than maybe what I was most passionate about, albeit I do love writing, so it all worked out in the end. But it wasn't until I'd sort of gone to Komodo, and I was actually on this boat trip there was an Australian zoologist on the same boat, and just got on really well. And she was sort of saying, you just do it, because I was writing a blog about Komodo dragons, but she was really into birds, and I was sort of talking about reptiles and things like that, and she's sort of saying, just go and do it, just write everything down, just go, and you know what you're on about. And I hadn't at that point ever met anybody really that was like, I don't know, like a field zoologist or something that sort of gave us a bit of encouragement. And then when I got down to Australia, I actually met a herpetologist from Brazil, we were working on the same job. We were selling solar panels door to door, just trying to earn a few quid to fund the traveling, really. But he's a evolutionary biologist. He's finished his PhD and everything now, mostly on turtle evolution. And he was we were just really good mates, and we sort of shared that interest, and he'd been sort of out herping and stuff, and was like, yeah, let's go and find some thorny devils, let's go. And I was like, right, result, I found my crowd. Like, it was everything. I'd gone for years living in the UK and not really understanding the wider community of reptile people. I wasn't engaged with it that much when I was a young person. So then to have people on the other side of the world, and very sort of accomplished herpetologists saying, let's go and do this and go out in the field together, and we just see what we can find. And to be fair, we didn't find very much, but then it was sort of like spurred me on to keep writing about things. And then when you see a species on the other side of the world that you go, oh, well, I know that must be some kind of like agamid, or some kind, or it could even be, it's a bearded dragon species or something, but I don't really know the differences between, Pogona minor and Pogona Henry Lawsoni or something like that. So at the time, you go and Google it and you go, oh, okay, well, that's what this one that lives here. And then I started piecing more and more of it together whilst actually out in Australia, just to ID the stuff that I was encountering out there, albeit I wasn't herping religiously. Like now, if I was to step anywhere in a 1,000-mile radius of Australia, I'm herping start to finish. At that time I was a young lad, just sort of there for a good time. But then started building that sort of knowledge up, and all the stuff that I was interested and passionate about, you start finding the other little cracks and crevices, and you start filling them in. You ask more questions, you answer more questions. And then when I got back to the UK, I had a pretty solid blog about different reptiles that I'd seen out there, and EK stuff come about. Did that for a few years, just from the UK. Went to a few shows, went to a few conferences, good networking over the years, mostly with the community itself, and sort of taking stock a little bit. And then I went to sort of South America 2 years ago, and basically I can do everything that I need to do from a laptop, which is one of the many joys of journalism. It can get a little bit boring working from home, when you get sort of a few weeks in and you've not gone out to do any cool interviews or anything yet. But it awards a lot of flexibility. So I took advantage of that and went to South America. Was there for best part of 6 months, really, just sort of moving between different countries, writing stories, herping along the way, joining conservationists, reaching out to field scientists and what initiatives they're doing in the field, and going and shadowing them for a little while. Then came back, went to Madagascar and was asked to sort of help support on a Australia herping tour. So worked towards that, and went and did that. And then by that point, I managed to get quite a good grasp on sort of field herping generally, and I'd basically come up with a proposal. Well, so there was an opportunity to go to New Caledonia to find crested geckos, to learn more about them in the wild, to create essentially a documentary, also do some research for one of our advertisers, Blue River Diets, who wanted to learn more about, basically for product development and things like that, learn more about the actual wild behaviors of crested geckos. So went there, and then also did another trip around Asia, sort of through Japan, Sri Lanka, India, Nepal. Got back July last year. Went to Morocco for a bit in October, and it's sort of stayed around here over Christmas. So I've been to quite a few countries, been quite lucky to see a lot of countries. In some of them, you're sort of tearing through at such a pace because you're moving quite far distances that some of them I saw more of than others, of course. But I'm still missing a big chunk of Africa, basically, that I need to out. And then, hopefully that'll be maybe next year. I'll look at trying to do a bit of a nice long sort of Africa trip. And other than that, though, I've seen a good sort of chunk of the world and a lot of the famous herping spots, which is quite nice now when you see field herpers talking about some of the really famous spots. To have already visited them along the way whilst moving around and traveling and stuff, it's good because there's always somebody that wants to, talk in a bar at the end of a conference or something like that about some herping experience, and it's just nice to actually know what people have been doing and just understand a bit more about it.
Cool. So, I just thought he envies you. You've had amazing adventures.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I have, like, I can't deny, like, when it comes back to whenever, like, everybody obviously moans about their jobs here and there, but I don't get a lot of sympathy, to be totally honest. And it's like, oh, where have you been now, Tom? Oh, yeah, it's such hard work, isn't it? Yeah, it's this, it's that. Yeah, all right. Well, I mean, there's ups and downs to it. I mean, the field herping and stuff is. It was intense. A lot of people, anyone that knows that they've gone out herping, knows that it can be really intense. So when you've done 2 or 3 days of it, when I was in Latin America as well, it was my partner was working UK hours, so she was up at like 2 in the morning, so 2, 3 in the morning. We were working 8-hour days, and then I was going out herping at night. It about nearly killed me, to be honest. It was knackering, but. It's all good fun, and it's experiences that when you look back, like I've been asked to do this talk for the BHS conference, and going back through my camera roll, I can't grumble. I've been very, very fortunate to do some of the things that I've done, and very lucky. So, yeah.
But I mean, no matter what the job is, you can absolutely love your job. At some point, you're going to moan about your job, no matter what the job is. Sort of thing.
God,
if you don't moan about your job at some point, it's not a job really.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's it. It's like I'm passionate about ECAT. I love it. Like I do. A lot of hard work goes into it, but it just takes a lot of hard work as well. So that's why even. Every bit of positive feedback comes directly to me because I'm sort of managing the whole project and wear a lot of hats. So when people say, I really love the magazine, or I really like that article, that was nice. Like, I think in most companies and most media publications and stuff like that, that might rarely even get back to the person that wrote it or the person that edited that piece. In this case, it does come back to me, and it is so heartwarming to know that people are enjoying it. So yeah.
So when it's the same as with zookeeping. So many people are like, oh, I'd love to be a zookeeper and stuff, but it's my sort of dream job. But there's times where you're like, oh, sort of thing, what am I doing this or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. There's always good days and bad days, isn't it? Like zookeeping sounds fantastic. Like I'm very envious of zookeepers. When even just go, for example, I stay in and I work from home all the time. When I get a visit to a zoo and I can go and interview some keepers for a day, fantastic, absolutely love it. But then when I think, if I'm walking away and it's absolutely chucking it down with rain and all the zookeepers, I bet they're thinking, oh, I could do with being in an office or that'd be quite nice. So there's always balance, ain't there? There's pros and cons.
That's it. With me at work, it's always come the winter months, everyone's jealous of me because I'm in a nice, toasty, warm buildings.
Oh yeah.
But then come the summer, I'm then jealous of them because my buildings are still really, really warm and then really, really humid and stuff. And I'm just like, like they're able to get some fresh air outside, sort of thing, and I'm melting. Kind of thing. So we sort of like have a laugh with each other about that. So with the Crested Gecko documentary, and for anyone watching that hasn't watched that, I do recommend going and watch that on the Exotic Keeper YouTube channel. It's only find it there. Going to be Crested Geckos. They're one of those geckos that I think when I first started keeping reptiles, I think they'd only just been rediscovered or not long been rediscovered. So I hadn't even heard of them when I first started keeping. And then, I think I remember probably some of the first ones like coming available, and where it was like, oh my god, we've got these extinct geckos sort of thing, because they were thought to be extinct for so long. And stuff. And then nowadays, one of the most popular reptiles in the world.
Yeah.
So to go and see those in the wild, in situ, like that's I think a lot of people's sort of dream. But what are some of the things they did learn about cresties out there in the wild, of like that comparisons perhaps can change some of our thoughts perhaps on on our captive ones.
Yeah, a lot. Crested geckos, according to the survey that we did last year, were the third most popular pet reptile, and actually we're at 16% of our respondents actually keep a crested gecko, which, considering how long they've been around for, is wild. I can see them massively becoming overtaking leopard geckos in popularity, and not that distant of a future. And why not? They're so well suited to captivity. They like it. So whilst there was a lot of things that going out there and learning, about their environment did change perceptions, there was a lot of it that I thought, actually, no, these animals are so well suited to this environment. Like, they are super docile. They are like the climate, day and night. I mean, we went in monsoon season, so it was raining all the time. Like, it was pretty miserable, to be honest. But it was pretty static. Like, there wasn't crazy temperature drops at night. There wasn't crazy, it was all basically warm and humid all the time. Lots and lots more rain than I think anyone ever provides crested geckos in captivity, because frankly, you'd need a good rain chamber for it. But and that was the time of year we were going, so there's an element of course we only saw a snapshot of it. We were there for 3 weeks, and it was sort of stayed around the sort of mid, I think it was low to mid 20s. There was occasions it rose to, I think, about 27, 28. But again, like, pretty standard sort of stuff. UVI again was very small. Like, we found crested geckos in the middle of the day that were out basking on the side of a tree. So I'm not saying they need UV. Absolutely, they need UV. Or they should be given UV, because they do get UV out in the sort of in the wild. But there's a lot of cloud cover. Or while we were there was loads of cloud cover. Humidity is pretty stable. Temperatures are pretty stable. The lizards are super docile, super chill, and it's everything that makes a good candidate. And they breed really well in captivity. So absolutely, like, I think they're fantastic pets, and something that people, should. I think they're well suited to it. Whereas, you look at other species, that even leopard geckos and bearded dragons, infinitely more popular at the minute, but actually they do have these crazy fluctuations, like even over the 24-hour period, let alone over a few months. You've got leopard geckos in dry deserts, and then harsh monsoons. You've got some populations up at reasonable altitudes, others like lowland. Like, so whereas crested geckos are almost so range restricted that we can learn a lot about where they live and provide it quite well. And I think we're doing that pretty well. The only things that really, from an enclosure design perspective, or something that's like could be immediate changes, is I think people make their tanks a little bit too pretty. I know that kind of contradicts what we were saying at the beginning of this, but these geckos, especially where we were finding them by obviously flashlight looking up, you sort of see their white bellies protruding from different branches. So we're going to probably encounter more animals on thinner branches because they're just that bit more visible. But, they're navigating very thin branches to potentially avoid predators, and just that there's a bit of security there as well. They're moving through understory layers. They're not right up in the canopies. They've got so a lot of the branches are almost perfectly sort of horizontal. So they're moving. We never found a single gecko twice. So we go out to the same location, a few nights on the trot. We never really found any that were that seem to be the same gecko. So so it could be that they're moving a fair distance as well. If they're, using olfactory senses to find their fruit and pick up traces like that, then they probably are moving reasonable distances, because we weren't finding lots of fruit either. We were finding quite a few berries and things like that. And the idea is to return in the dry season. So hopefully we'll have a bit more comparison there. But realistically, we're doing quite well, but it's just, I guess, the structure of the enclosures. People tend to keep them in. Well, a lot of people recommend 45 or 45 cubes, which is, I think, too small. 45 60s seem a bit more appropriate, but realistically, these geckos are, probably between 2 and 5 meters up. Now, we're not going to, replicate that with a big 5 meter vivarium, but then you have to sort of start asking questions about, what are we trying to replicate? Do we want to create a fraction of the forest floor that's got a giant fern in it and an empty log for them to sleep in? Or do we want to be thinking about, where they would actually be occurring, which would be higher up, and, horizontal branches coming out from the background, giving them place to sort of traverse. We put a lot of emphasis on that vertical space, but horizontally, they're going to be moving across those different things. And I think it's easy for somebody to look at their crested gecko terrarium and go, yeah, let's make it gorgeous with a beautiful plant here, nice like bromeliad, and we can put loads of mossy branches and things like that. But we weren't finding any mosses. There was quite a few ferns, but and epiphytic ferns. So, perhaps a bromeliad would fill that kind of niche, but there are no bromeliads there. They're mostly from the sort of Americas. We were finding actually bark that was, and I don't know how someone would sort of replicate this in captivity, but like loose bark coming off, because there were a lot of eucalypts there as well. The bark was sort of peeling off, which could potentially be, that might be like a more naturalistic refuge for these geckos during the day, rather than a hollowed out sort of cork tube. Albeit they all serve a similar purpose, but there were certainly little bits about the environment that I was picking up on that I was thinking, this isn't something that we really do. And then we actually visited some habitat for gargoyle geckos as well, and they're a bit more versatile. They're very widespread on Grande Terre, on the main island of New Caledonia. So it's hard. It really is hard to pinpoint this is how you should keep them. And I'm not saying that, but they live in this scrubland, or this like shrubland, like maquis kind of short shrubs and bushes, and they thrive there. As the substrate's thick red clay and looks completely different to the environment that crested geckos live in. And yet nobody is making these distinctions, because a lot of the research, or a lot of those first sort of bits of field data that help us inform our knowledge of New Caledonian geckos, is from those first sort of crested geckos and leeches and stuff that came out. And now it's like, we're starting to get Eurodactylodes. We're starting to see, a lot more people keeping gargoyle geckos, and it's not just a one size fits all. So I think that was probably the main takeaway, and that's something I'd love to do when I go back, is actually draw a direct comparison between one habitat and another habitat, and find a few different localities of gargoyle geckos, because that is there's going to be so much more variability in that species than there is with crested geckos that are extremely niche. But I don't know why, because like on the mainland, a lot of the habitat looks quite similar, and there are populations on the mainland, and they are very range restricted on there. But there's something about it that crested geckos seem to love.
That's definitely interesting. But I think I remember seeing the footage that you put out about the gargoyles and comparing their habitat stuff, because I've kept gargoyles and cresties for years, and my parents have still got them and stuff, and set them up basically the same way as each other, because it was like, they come from the same place. Sort of thing. Not really like, and you start having go, they come from the same island, what's the difference going to be? And then go, oh, actually, it is a slightly different habitat sort of thing. They're not completely sort of crossing over. But that's something that everyone does initially. I mean, I think the first Gargs got was many many years ago, and it was purely because it was all like, oh, they're similar to Cresties, but slightly different, sort of thing. I think I got Gargs before Cresties were taken out of Racodaculus. I think, that's how long ago it was. And so,
I think, and it's, it's just those. There's so many little like variables with these things as well. It's like with leopard geckos and fat tail geckos. Like people like us, say, oh well, you just keep a fat tail gecko slightly more humid than a leopard gecko, and jobs are good. But that was the narrative when I was younger. And like in reality, not only do leopard geckos experience really intense monsoons, and just about the only time anyone ever sees them is during monsoon periods, but actually the guys in sort of like West Africa and where, in the range of fat tail geckos, so you only ever see them when it's crazy dry. Like they find their little humid hides, and then when it's really dry, they're out hunting for grasshoppers and stuff. So they're completely different parallels. Perhaps that meets in the middle from an environmental sort of terrarium perspective, but taking two completely unrelated species and going, they look kind of similar, or they, and sort of grouping it together is something that everybody, like, it's just a perpetual thing, because everybody's sort of learning it. When these species are introduced into the hobby, it then takes quite a few years for people to go, actually, this is now a popular species, and maybe now we could have another look at what they actually experience in the wild. I think a lot of species fall victim to that sort of like just arbitrary grouping,
Yeah, absolutely, and it happens not just in the hobby; it happens in zoos as well. We do similar sometimes and go, oh, this species really needs looking after, but we don't know how to look after it. But is it going to be similar to this species that we know how to look after? Sometimes it can work, and sometimes it doesn't work, sort of thing. Whether that be like I don't know, the lake cuckoo frog, which is a Xenopus, and they were comparing it to like Xenopus laevis, sort of thing. Yes, it's a lot smaller and stuff, and then it's like, actually no, it needs completely different conditions. Sort of thing.
And it's like you're just going to take your best knowledge. Like again, it would sort of back to London. Like I've done an article on the Bitis parviocula, and when you've only got a handful of records of the species anywhere, like to even work from, you have to go, right, well, it's in the same clade as Gabonica and Nasicornis, so that's going to be our best starting point, and then you start building up,
you do little tweaks here and there and stuff of like, this is working, or no, this is not working, and stuff, and when it's something that's perhaps there's either very few records or no records at all, and again, colleagues I was using that certainly we're working with like things like the Desertas wall spider and Desertas snails that no one had ever looked after before, and it's all like everything's brand new kind of thing. There's no records of anything, sort of thing, and luckily they've been successful in basically saving those species. To the point that they've released a bunch of snails to the wild. Kind of thing, from taking them off to save them and going, right, no one's actually no one's kept these before. Right, what's the nearest thing? What can kind of look at what's the diet going to be and stuff. How are we going to feed these things? Sort of thing. And then being able to breed them in such numbers that they're able to release a good few thousand.
Yeah, it's just a massive success, and you've got to start from somewhere, haven't you? It's good to have certain comparisons. It's when, like they say, the private hobby sort of moves at such a pace where then suddenly a species can be owned by or kept by hundreds of thousands of people across the world, but nobody's stopped to think, what does that actually experience in the wild,
Yeah, that's it. And kind of the phenomenon of Cresties of going from being once thought extinct to being rediscovered to just a few being in captivity to suddenly just everywhere and stuff. It is a testament, and when people you know, and I've done this. You sort of moan sometimes, especially if I go to like a reptile show, whether it's here or States or wherever, and it's like, or you see it's the same few species. Like they're just the most successful kept ones, and arguably the best ones as a pet species, sort of thing. Because most of them are sort of, you know, sort of that bit more docile and perhaps don't need quite, you know, huge masses of knowledge to keep them well.
Yeah, they're like just more tolerant, you know. And I think there's a good justification. Every popular species has a few excellent justifications for why it's popular. Like otherwise, it just wouldn't be popular. But I also think we have maybe inherited some of those like arbitrary lists of what is the best beginner reptile from a generation of keepers that were learning how to keep everything. And some animals just ended up just being a bit more resilient than others. Whereas I think maybe now we're at a good point for people to start not experimenting. I think that's too broad of a, you know, that would be kind of irresponsible for a new keeper to just experiment. But like the way that people sort of keep these beginner reptiles, if they're kept well, can be transferred to other species. I think some of those species might even be like, they could be more docile, or they could be more, you know, or one species could be diurnal instead of nocturnal, and actually people would see it more and they'd engage with it more, or might just be smaller, might be a fraction of the size, you know, and that means that you give them a bigger enclosure. And I think there's, you know, we're at this interesting sort of crossroads where, for example, the crested geckos just snuck up with popularity in the last sort of 10, 15, 20 years. And just out of nowhere, seemingly. And a few of the other New Caledonian geckos are going the same sort of way. And I wonder, you know, even, for example, like viper geckos, I saw that they were really popular a few years ago. I've not seen many people selling viper geckos anymore, but they're these smaller alternatives that can be kept in. So whereas we're now at a point where the 2 foot viv is way too small for a leopard gecko, like a couple of little, you know, viper geckos potentially. You go even bigger to the same size as what a leopard gecko should be kept in. You put some viper geckos in that, they're having a great time, you know. And I think now we understand more about the principles of, you know, heating, humidity, UV, light, all that sort of thing. You open a lot of doors for people to potentially even find even better beginner species. And I think in the next 10 years, it'll be really interesting to see what really takes off, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. My parents have got a potential pair of viper geckos.
Oh, really?
Sort of thing.
Really
they picked up from mail, and then then I got what I'm pretty sure is a female, which is slightly smaller, so it's all like once it grows on a little bit more, sort of thing. They're hoping that they'll be a pair, and then they can get them breeding and stuff, and they're fantastic little geckos. I had those myself, when they first became popular, kind of thing, and it was all like, oh my god, this is a tiny little thing, and I remember the breeder at the time be like, just keep them like a leopard gecko. They're just smaller, kind of thing. I was like, I can do that. So, and fantastic little ones, and some of the sort of train I've been seeing of, you know, going through social media, whether it be here or in the States, of more and more people going down the route in terms of social media of small geckos in large enclosures. Sort of thing, and doing that, which is like that's a cool, for me, that's a really cool thing. And you know, people like even like specializing in that rather than just going like, here's this which is the largest of whatever sort of thing, and using big things to be the impressive thing, and going, look at this tiny little gecko.
Exactly. And there's like the micro geckos are really cool, but like even like anoles and things like that, you know, I know people just didn't bother breeding them because they were coming in such huge numbers of imports. But also, if people were breeding them at the time, and now we've got to a point where you can build a huge naturalistic terrarium and keep a handful of anoles, you know, I know a few people that
fantastic displays.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it doesn't get a more interesting reptile to watch than, you know, sit and watch a colony of anoles communicating with each other. Like, that is just fascinating stuff. And yet you've only got, well, you've got a few really, really specialist animal keepers that work with all the dactyloides and all that sort of thing. But you don't have, they're not like a typical kind of pet. And yet the people are going out and buying like poison frogs and all breeding them with great success, and everything's all going really nicely on that front. But I wonder how many people actually would quite like, new keepers that are going, oh, well, I want a tropical tank and I want something that's pretty in there. Could do, anoles could be another possibility. And yeah, it's just that sort of obviously supply, demand, and rethinking what is possible, and what would have been probably a very fragile lizard that maybe didn't do too well and was coming in such huge numbers that nobody was really that bothered about maybe 10, 15 years ago. Now could be a really interesting project.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, unfortunately, she doesn't anymore. Unfortunately, Amy's one passed away. Yeah, my partner had a viper gecko, but we think she was sold a fairly old one.
Oh,
I think.
All right.
Possibly, which was a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, she just he had green and brown anoles when he was younger, but I haven't seen any in years.
Yeah, it's just a shame, they're so cool. They're really cool little lizards.
They were sort of going back. I had those when I was young because they were everywhere. They were super cheap to buy as well. They were far too cheap. Like sort of thing, which just meant that people just didn't appreciate what they had, sort of thing with them. But like, it was so interesting to see the males just show their dewlaps off, and like, oh my god, it's flash of color.
Yeah, and they're such a diverse group of lizards that if people were really that dedicated to setting up some breeding projects and stuff, they would take off. I want to think they would take off, but all the data seems to show that they wouldn't. But there's some, really nice, like South America, some of the montane species. I imagine they're quite difficult to keep. I don't think it's going to be like a green anole that will just, and brown anoles that are a bit more resilient to that sort of thing. I think them sort of high altitude, they're a bit problematic anyway, but they're so pretty. And if it meant that actually people could keep them in a similar way but in cooler temperatures, I guess humidity is an issue, but that might even be better for some people as well. People that are concerned about the ongoing electrical costs for their reptiles, and having cooler species, you still have to run some lighting, but what works for one maybe doesn't work for others. I like, it surprises me just how popular bearded dragons are, given how enormous they are, how much energy you require to keep them properly. They, I know they eat a lot of veggies as they age, but typically you throw in live foods in there as well, and it just seems bizarre that potentially the most expensive and one of the most demanding reptiles is the most popular by a long, long way. I mean, I know royal pythons probably sit just behind them, but still bearded dragons, according to our data, are ruling the roost, which, I wonder whether that will change.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, nowadays, I'm always like surprised that they became more popular than a Rankins, because I'm like, a Rankins it's just a mini beardy.
Yeah, they're lovely, isn't they?
And so, and like my parents they got an AAL, so they do displays and stuff, and they've got Rankins, and they've got they always rehome beardies and stuff. And it's like comparing an adult Rankins to an adult beardie, and they're like, if you got the choice and you're on to buy, try and go for a Rankins if you can get Rankins, because they don't get anywhere near as big.
No,
sort of thing. So if you don't have the space, yes, it'd be lovely to have those in, those in a 4x2x2. And I think that's a bit small for a beardie, in my opinion, nowadays, sort of thing. I'm like, sort of thing. Yeah. But like, little Rankins, absolutely lovely thing. Some great patterning on them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's even like almost like too much of an obvious choice for somebody that just can have a very similar experience, but it's smaller, more manageable, potentially eats a bit less. still expensive to run and all that
Still
kind of.
expensive in terms of the energy costs, but it's
Can't avoid that really as sort of exotics people, can we?
sort of thing. But there's been I think was it last year's AHH Big HS conference that Francis Coscari kind of talking about like in terms of like reptile keeping or herp keeping within NG cost of living crisis and energy and stuff, and it's like about trying to look at more temperate species and look like wherever you live in the world, look at that bracket of what I and see that like broadly along go around the world that's normally a fairly similar sort of environments and stuff, and look at various reptiles from a similar environment to what you live in terms of temperature ranges and stuff, whereas like you won't then have to spend quite as much on energy. Of like if you're living in a cold country but you're trying to keep something that wants 40-degree basking area, well, that's going to take a lot of energy.
Definitely.
But if you're living in somewhere where that is your average temperature is 20 degrees and it wants a basking area of 25 degrees, well, that's not that much.
And there's a lot. I know he keeps a lot of the sort of like Central Asian, like Alafi, some different rat states, a few colubrids and stuff that are like a bit closer to home. And why not? They're like you've got such a massive amount of biodiversity when you look longitudinally, latitudinally.
One of them is.
One of them. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like at that point, like in them cooler climates, I know a guy who used to keep eastern bearded dragons outdoors most of the year.
Yeah,
and it's in the UK in a greenhouse, and I think might have been some supplementary heat somewhere, but essentially you would never even. And don't try this at home. I imagine there was some. It can still have some issues, but those eastern species, at least they have slightly cooler temperature requirements, and with a decent greenhouse or whatever I don't know. There's different, like we say, there's different sort of alternative species that might be better suited, and those cooler climates are a great starting point for people that are maybe not dead set on a particular species, because sometimes having you shouldn't be impulsive with the things that you buy, especially not with animal purchases. But having a new keeper actually develop their support network of keepers first, and actually ask them, these are the traits that I want from my animal. These are what I would like. This is what's important to me. This is what I can budge on. This is what I can't budge on. Then those people can sort of help direct you. Whereas I think when you're young, you go, right, well, bearded dragons, leopard geckos, crested geckos, they're all easy to keep. So it needs to be one of those three, which is a good, responsible choice as a young person for sure. But I just wonder whether actually building that support network first might change the rhetoric a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so many species out there that are good candidates of a beginner species sort of thing within whether you're reptile or amphibian, and then again down to the invertebrates and stuff. Like there's so many out there, and we often whether it be within trying to cite the same ones all the time, but actually there's so many that are potential candidates as a good beginner sort of species, and then and that then in turn goes down to the scorpions and various other things and stuff that are like actually these ones are really good. Sort of beginner species that fairly simple to keep and stuff. Again, ones that perhaps don't need necessarily a huge amount of heat. Compared to sort of the desert ones and stuff. And actually with the scorpions, we've seen a trend over the past year or so of more and more people getting interested in the smaller species, sort of thing, keeping smaller scorpions than the big ones.
Really,
sort of thing, which is a really interesting trend.
Well,
not in terms of like the DWA ones, but like things like the Scorpiops and stuff, which are tiny little ones, and the pygmy woods and stuff, and ones that will just like would happily certainly little fingernail as an adult
Yeah.
kind of thing. And so people are going, after those a lot more than emperor scorpions sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which as a scorpion lover, it's fantastic because there's such variety of scorpions coming out and about now, available nowadays.
Yeah.
That's like, yes, all of them I want to try and breed as I can. Same as Tim and George and that.
Yeah,
So,
nice. I guess with inverts as well, like a successful breeding is, I guess, very successful. You get a lot of offspring off inverts.
certainly can do with some of them. So, that's why, like, there's certain species that I'm like, I won't breed sort of thing because of just the amount. I have like salmon pink bird eater spiders.
Right.
I don't need 2,000 of those.
No.
So there's enough of those in the world. So, but I'll just keep them. So, Amy just joined back, and I think she missed the whole chat we had about Cresties.
Oh no!
You have to watch them back, Amy.
Yeah, might have to watch on repeat. Or there's the whole documentary as well on the EK.
Yeah.
That might be easier.
So, but yeah, it's definitely it's interesting. All the various trends and stuff. And I've seen all sorts being recommended as sort of beginner species. And certainly, within. I mean, I remember one time at some point someone was trying to recommend a retic as a beginner species. Like, no, what are you on about? and that was to a kid as well. I was like, no, don't go recommend to a kid get a retic. What are you on about? No. That's the species definitely not, but
I guess the large constrictors, I really see the appeal with them because they're just gorgeous animals, but I wonder whether people, because keeping practices generally have changed so quicker than the lifespan of most reptiles. Like with large constrictors, I know like boa constrictors and boa imperator are a bit of a problem for the guys at NCRW. And you sort of think, like, was there a time when it was like you say, like this is a beginner snake? Because you could have had small snake, you could have had a corn snake, or you could have had a big snake and you have a boa constrictor. And then over the years, you have other species sort of start becoming more popular, and eventually that polarized A or B becomes less suitable compared to everything else that's on offer. Potentially sort of highlights the point, I guess, of having a more sort of diverse sort of captive populations of things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and sort of and the sort of trends and fashions of what is available. I mean, at one point, like I remember Western hognoses being one of the most commonly kept sort of snakes, and were absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
Cheap as anything kind of thing, and then they kind of went out of fashion for it, and then they sort of come back into fashion.
Yeah, that's interesting. You should say that actually, because even like 3 or 4 years ago, they were quite popular, and yet I haven't really seen hognoses in.
They go up and down all the time. I find with hognoses, like at one point, everyone has them, and and they're fantastic snakes. They're really cool snakes, and don't get huge. Size for a lot of people.
Yeah, they're adorable as well, aren't they? They're the perfect sort of like well-natured, small. Again, that's another species that's a really well-suited species for captivity. But I guess maybe the fluctuations in popularity is just who's breeding them as and when. And I know if they're from North America, I imagine they one clutch a year.
Yeah, I think so.
And it probably has, temperature that those seasonal fluctuations need to change. And I don't know enough about hognose snakes to really know what that looks like, how big a clutch it typically looks like. But maybe there's just not so many people breeding them, or they breed infrequently. So you get some shows where there's loads of them, and then some where they're just not available for the rest of the year. But you're right. Like I see they're like one minute they're really popular, then the rest they're not. But I don't think people struggle with them. I think they're quite manageable.
And it's just one of those things where it's like, Corns have always been popular, Royals always seem to be popular and stuff. But Hognoses sort of seem to go up and down and stuff, and it's all like, but they're lovely. So,
yeah.
And I think like another species that I think for me is like a perfect candidate of, a good beginner species, African house snakes.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So, and even for me also, which we had one years ago and could never find another one, was the olive house snakes. Like,
yeah,
the olive ones are so nice.
Yeah.
Sort of thing, but again, African house snake is like, why is that not more popular? That's such a fantastic snake.
I know, and you'd have thought with such a wide, or they used to, it's starting to change a little bit now, but they used to be so widely distributed, like basically all of Africa. I think now they're starting to be, redescribed and recategorized and all that sort of thing. But there shouldn't have been a shortage of imports, which means there shouldn't have been a shortage of people wanting to. Well, that's where the problem was: people actually wanting to breed them. And but I mean, there are a lot of people successfully breeding them, and I think there's even morphs and stuff you can get for African house snakes. So it's like you say,
like, again, like a really nice natured snake kind of thing, and stays again kind of relatively small.
Yeah,
sort of thing. There's a nice manageable one for people that just get into it and stuff, and they're just lovely. I absolutely love house snakes. I think they're fantastic little ones.
And I think you can make an interesting terrarium, that looks, again, maybe we're going to see slight changes with people now leaning towards more naturalistic setups, but you can make a really nice sort of like semi-arid kind of house snake setup that looks fantastic. Whereas I don't know whether you'd even start with a corn snake one. In fact, that's something I'd love to see, is people sending me fully bioactive naturalistic corn snake setups, because I'm sure there's countless ones out there. But
the interesting one with corn snakes, I find, is that, and even like these when we used to have corn snakes here, we don't anymore. Most people, you never look at doing actually what they would actually be like truly in the wild of a naturalistic one. Always do barn style. If you're doing any kind of themes, it's always a barn style enclosure.
Yeah.
So I had that here at my work when I started here. We had corn snakes and stuff. It was got a milk thing in it, and wagon wheel and stuff. And so it just seems to be this thing that if you're doing any kind of nice setup for corn snakes, it's always barn style sort of thing. Or like let's do a barn for them and stuff, like instead of actually this is maybe because it's always it tends to be morphs and stuff, but like that would be actually quite cool to see a wild type in a naturalistic sort of how they would be in the wild type setup would be interesting. So just always barn style all the time. Which is interesting. Sort of like you can tell a story, but it always seems to be the case. With those guys,
I suppose it's quite nice to have the odd theme, isn't it? But it's funny to imagine like a corn snake in a fully set up like zoo enclosure kind of thing.
I don't know many zoos at the moment. If they've got normally if they've got corn snakes, so it's normally be like in an education centre normally, so they're more just dead fans. So then normally will be in a standard viv kind of thing, and won't necessarily be even sort of naturalistic setup, or like I say they'll be on display in a barn style setup thing for it, because sort of tells that story rather than the barn story. But that should be actually a really interesting one thing to do, because for some of that is so familiar with people. Sort of go, actually this is what it looks like. As that goes to some of the other things. I mean, sometimes the beauty of enclosure design of there's so many styles you can do. And especially then again, in zoo. I mean, I remember the old. I don't know if they still have because obviously they've got the new building out in London. But when they had the white tree frogs in there, and they'd done a mock-up toilet.
Oh yeah,
enclosure or
yeah,
Australian toilet and filled it with white tree frogs.
It's a great. That's a great idea. I remember when I was in Australia the first time. But there was like a hostel I was staying at, and I was there just at the beginning. I don't know. I can't imagine what season I would have been there. I was waiting for the mango season to start so that I could do some farm work. So probably on the cusp of the rain, and then I've been living there for a few weeks up in the Kimberley region. And then so we started to get a little bit of rain, and there was just white tree frogs just lived in the bin outside, like my hostel room. So it was every day you go out, and there was about 5 of them just sat on the bin, and they're just cool and that sort of thing. And then they just, as soon as the day came around, they'd get back in the bin. They just live in the bin, come back out, sit on the bin, cool. Sometimes move around a bit, but essentially just spend the whole time in the bin. And it was like, why? Like literally, we were on the border of like a sort of protected area, some really nice habitat, like a really nice gorge with some water running through it, and yet they just lived in the bin and just called all night probably just to bother people actually. But animals are so 3-dimensional, I guess, with the way that they sort of live with people. I know we've sort of imposed our sort of anthropogenic changes on them, but it is interesting to see that even not that they have, it's probably wrong to say habitat preference, but the choices that they make, the active choices to live in certain micro climates within sort of human inhabitants in inhabitation is crazy. It's like the water dragons and stuff in Bangkok and all that kind of thing. Like they're famous because they just don't care. They just, they eat well because there's fish sort of bycatch and old nets and stuff thrown around, and there's rubbish for them to rootle around in. And some species seem to do really, really well. And it's not, you don't want to go, oh yeah, I'm just going to set up a terrarium that looks like a bin. Yeah, that's going to look nice. But it is sort of quite interesting to see, and with an establishment like a zoo that can sort of explain how that toilet is perhaps the only water in however many radius because it's dry there, and then there's a bit more of a narrative to it. But it is really interesting to see. There was a point in Bocas del Toro. I went to Red Frog Beach, and I was staying at the hotel. Trying and then basically bounced around a few of the islands, photographing the Ufaga Pamilio, and on Bastamentos, the frogs are gorgeous. They're sort of textbooks, so red at the top, black spots, white belly, but they're absolutely everywhere. And I remember I was sat at the bar just trying to get on with some work, and something caught my eye, and this tiny little strawberry poison frog was bouncing across the decking. It was a huge decking with a swimming pool in the middle of it, and it was just bouncing and probably, I don't know, 5 meters away from any foliage, any shelter whatsoever, just straight across the across the decking. And you sort of look at that and you think, wow, people in our sort of hobby are building it's like there has to be X amount of bromeliads, it has to be this amount of humidity, it has to be this and this and this. It's in the wild, they're just sort of getting on with it, and that's not a good thing. At the end of the day, people went and built that swimming pool in their habitat, but they're not struggling. Definitely not. That strawberry poison frogs actually I think there was some talk about them even causing a bit of a problem at one of the sites in Costa Rica, because they are just everywhere.
Yeah, no, don't even see stuff like that. And I mean, it's one of the things that some cities do really well, trying to kind of show animals are in a human habitat of actually we do live around animals whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So, and even highlight some things again. Well, when Bristol Zoo was around, they used to have they set up it's like a bush style toilet for their Black Widow spider.
Oh,
They
really?
put a Black Widow spider in the toilet and put obviously glass over the top of it. But you can go there and look down and see a Black Widow in the toilet.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's an interesting.
Like the interpretation of the fact that a lot of people that get bitten by Black Widows get bitten by them because they sat on the toilet, sort of thing, and there's a Black Widow in it.
Yeah.
So, which is like super interesting. And they also had then the sort of the Nocturnal house bit where you came out of the Nocturnal house into then a mock-up house,
right?
Kind of thing, where they then had a home-style aquarium and they had kitchen cupboards with mice in them. Stuff.
Yeah,
and it was like again show that sort of stuff. And again, actually, London, the Bugs one, again, if they still have it, they got the like kitchen cabinet they can open and see cockroaches sort of thing.
All right, yeah. It is good to see
how these things can relate to us and stuff, and then have the education around along the side as well. So it's sort of like not complete always a naturalistic enclosure, but a themed one that has an educational purpose.
Yeah,
it's very great. Is always interesting. Although I know sometimes it sort of backfires sometimes if people don't like the look of it. I know when I've done the species of turtle they've done it as a kitchen.
They did, yeah.
Because it's like in some ways fantastic to try and get that message across of like this happens.
Yeah.
But some people were like very much like, I can't believe you're showing that. Sort of thing.
And I suppose it also like completely removes the sort of socio-political aspects of it. Like I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I think, that there needs to be good education around getting the balance right between obviously eating sort of bushmeat and conservation and the cultural links between eating potentially endangered species, but also like that is quite on the nose, isn't it? Like I had
and they kind of knew it was going to be on the nose of doing it because they pop a menu as well and stuff as one of the sign as part of the signage and stuff. So it was they were going for shock, and they said like that's what they were going for. That like shock, but what a lot of people sort of didn't like was the fact that it was just completely unnaturalistic kind of thing. Which was actually really interesting because obviously comparing that then to the white tree frog enclosure of being a toilet. So it's like, well, that's not exactly a naturalistic enclosure, but I think because people were like, well, they do live like that in the wild, kind of thing. Like they kind of forgave that one a bit more, and it wasn't. Obviously, they're not insinuating that let's eat them, sort of thing. Because part of it was like to try and shock people like, this is what's happening, kind of thing. But because I remember, Ben did a whole talk about it at Biaza conference, and it's all like, on surveys, people really didn't like this enclosure. And some of it was just because it's like, well, it doesn't look very natural. Kind of thing.
And I think people,
which is interesting sort of data to get as a zoo of like, people do, when people go, actually, no, I don't like enclosure because it's unnatural looking, sort of thing, and the story doesn't quite hit sometimes.
I think especially with reptiles as well is you've got an excellent opportunity there to give. It might just be me, I don't know, but when you go into a reptile house, I like the idea of feeling like I've gone to another country, another world, like a different world. Everything is built within the confines of a space that can be environmentally controlled, and I can see why people would be thinking, oh, right, that just doesn't look, it's just not blowing me away. It kind of actually just seems a little bit ridiculous when the enclosure next to it is perhaps like a perfectly scaped, like Amazon rainforest. Like you're naturally going to go, well, I'm more drawn to that because I've never seen
one's more aesthetically pleasing than the other. And sometimes what we've got to try and do when it comes to perhaps amphibians and the invertebrates at a zoo, is trying to gauge people's interest into it, because so many other people don't come to see those animals. That sort of thing, especially with the inverts. It's always the difficult one of trying to engage people to actually look at the inverts.
Yeah.
So, and by that is essentially trying to make the enclosures pretty, kind of thing.
That's it. Give them something that actually looks like they want, you know, like there's something in there to look for, and then they find the inverts, and it's because I suppose it is it's even harder sell really with inverts. I'm here preaching about herp conservation. It's like, well, inverts get overlooked all the time. I mean, do you have what are your most popular species at the zoo? Is there some that people actually come to look at from an invert perspective?
From an invert perspective, our most popular would probably be the leafcutter ants.
Oh yeah, you can do
because
some cool stuff with them.
They're always doing something, and that's the thing. They're constantly doing stuff, and as long as there's plenty of things for them to cut up on their feeding platforms, then they're carrying stuff, and that's what people like to see. Sort of thing. Whereas most of the other display inverts don't necessarily do a lot, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they see them go, oh yeah, there's and stuff. So they'll look at them for a little bit, like they'll look at the tarantulas for a little bit, but they tend to be just sitting there, not doing much.
Yeah.
As I was saying, like the scorpions will sometimes look a bit because it takes a little bit longer to find them, sort of thing. Sort of try and find them, and if I'm in there, I'll if I've got my black light on me, I'll be like, oh, there you go, and show a black one, and then try and engage with, of like, oh my god, they do that kind of thing. Kind of thing that amazes people if they don't see that. So, but we don't do nowadays. But when we had our old sort of building, one of the most popular ones, and actually one of the most popular ones in any zoo, if they do it, locusts.
Really?
Yep.
Why? Just
because they're active and they're moving around.
Yeah.
Kind thing and stuff. It sounds so weird for anyone keeping, around, but I know Bristol done it. They actually displayed just regular desert locusts and black crickets.
Right. And people just loved watching them.
And because they'll be active. So, people would do it.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
So, we don't do that sort of nowadays, but you see that in a few zoos sometimes where they'll just display some of the live food kind of thing, and because they're moving, they move around, they do stuff. People love it.
Yeah.
So, obviously for anyone that keeps them, reptiles or amphibians, they come in and go, "I got those on display."
Yeah, I suppose it's like, but it's like when you can have the most charismatic, like say like green tree monitor. I love seeing green tree monitors in really big enclosures at zoos. And I've seen a lot of the arboreal monitors that are quite popular anyway. You see them at most zoos now, at least one of the sort of group, but they're always like actually my favorite to watch because you can just sit and watch them doing stuff. To be fair, particularly the Prasinus than the Beckeri or the Macraei, because I don't know whether that's actually a personality thing. I don't keep them myself, so perhaps more of a Varanid sort of expert can say that. But the green ones just seem like they're constantly looking for stuff. They're constantly hunting. They're really unfazed by people. And that is exactly what you want from an exhibit. And that's a species that also perhaps they don't have as much of a story as some of the other variants, but still there's a story there for people to get engaged with. And then you could have something like, I don't know, even a massive crocodilian. If it doesn't move very much, people walk past them.
I mean, we've got Cuvier sort of came in here, and the most common question is, are they real? Because they don't move. It's like,
Yeah. They do look a bit unreal, to be fair. I think of all the reptiles, someone can get away with asking that.
Sort of thing. So yeah, they do look like a bit of wood, but that's a camouflage.
Yeah.
That's what they want to look like.
Yeah, they're sort of black, dead behind the eyes. Look, that's their thing.
So, but yeah, the most common question when it comes to any of the reptiles that my work is are the caimans real? So like, yep, they're real. And then like, can you get them to move? Not really.
You
Sort of
can
thing,
stick
like,
your finger in if you like.
that ain't gonna happen. Sort of thing. And so and then we don't have like a huge amount of reptiles here, but those ones are sort of popular. And people are certainly finding we've got a carpet python, and we've got a nice big walk-in enclosure for the carpet python.
Oh, nice.
So when he's not in shed, he's currently in pre-shed, so he's hiding at the moment. But when he's not in shed, he's out and about and climbing up high and stuff. And they're like, he looks tiny in this enclosure, sort of thing. Which is lovely because he was dumped on us years ago,
Right.
sort of thing for being aggressive,
Right.
sort of thing.
Yeah, just a bit of
and just hadn't been worked with and probably kept in far too small an enclosure to point out where I can walk underneath him and he doesn't flinch at all. Kind of thing. He's just like, oh yeah, you're there, sort of thing.
Nice.
So, and to give people then just another perspective, because I get people sometimes going like, "Oh, carnivores aren't they're really aggressive?" Ones like, no, like they can be defensive.
Yeah.
So, but
it's just all about treating them right, you know, and
give them the right environment and the right space, and that like they're easy to work with. Kind of thing is, and for me that goes for any species really.
Yeah, and I think that's when you've got the resources of a zoo, and I can guess that you start to see that differently. And it's like in the field, you've got species. Some of the species that you think are going to be sort of potentially snappy or have a bit of a reputation in captivity are not like that at all. And then you've got some of the most sort of like chill kind of reptiles in captivity that have been bred for generations that are dead snappy in the field. And people's perspectives who have different ideas on what's what, it's just all about sort of experience and the environment that the animal's in. They're going to react differently. And like you say, with the carpet pythons being, viv defensive is like a term that's thrown around so much. And it's like, that's probably true. You'd be pretty defensive if you're in a viv, I'm not saying that every animal, every snake needs some ridiculous enclosure just to feel comfortable, because that's not, I don't think you can equate the two. But there is a level of, well, if you're not going to try other ways of making this animal feel more secure, which may come at a cost or come at for resources or money or time or whatever it is, what do you expect? Right.
That's it. I mean, I was trying to equate it to, especially if they're wherever it's snake or there's whatever, and it's kept in something that's perhaps a bit small, and perhaps essentially the enclosure is its hide. Kind of thing. I was going to like, well, that's like me being in bed, kind of thing. Someone rips off the covers, I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be like that sort of thing. Whereas if they got somewhere to hide within that enclosure, sort of thing,
exactly,
and stuff, and you work with them, they got that bit of space, and so like most of the time they're so much more calmer. So, and the thing with the carpet, even at so when I'm in enclosure, I wasn't really happy with in terms of the size of it and stuff, and I was like, want them in a bigger enclosure, and then one became available. I was like, can we put them in here, please? Can we do this? And I got to go ahead to do it. I was like, I'm pretty sure he's going to be much easier for everyone to work with and stuff, because we won't be invading his space, kind of thing. And so far, it's, in my opinion, it's been a success in that I can go, I can now have volunteers working with him without sort of being supervised and stuff. Because
Excellent, yeah.
I'm happy that he's not gonna defend himself. Sort of thing. He's gonna be like, oh, I don't like that you're there. I'll move over here instead. Sort of thing. He can get away from us if he wants to. Which is so. Oh, we've just actually gone past 5 to 10. Just in the time. The time's actually flying.
I know, zip past, isn't it? Wow.
So, which is fantastic. But before because I normally end sort of around 10. Sort of work tomorrow. Is there anything that perhaps we didn't cover, or anything that you want to sort of shout out about for everyone in chat in terms of perhaps what's coming up with Exotics Keeper or yourself?
Yeah, I mean, loads of stuff coming up with VK and also myself. They're sort of two of the same thing now. But yeah, I'm trying to think how much I can get away with. So AHH BHS conference, I'll be doing a talk at that. That's in March. Anyone who's listening from the UK, it's always a brilliant conference, I'm sure.
Definitely recommend the conference. I need to get my ticket. I need to sort that out, and hopefully I'll be there.
Yeah, it is always a good one. And then we've got a few more expeditions lined up this year, actually. Similar kind of concept to the Crested Gecko stuff. Film going out into the sort of wild habitats of a few very, very popular species, filming, taking data readings, hopefully working with some people in situ to manage some data loggers, going into a lot of depth with a few very popular species, but I'm keeping that close to my chest for now.
Right, that'd be good.
Yeah.
So, especially with the popular, some of the more popular species, because so often we don't bother researching them anymore, don't we? Have them already, and there's always more to learn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this first project will be something that hasn't been done before. So I absolutely love the work of some of the vloggers out there that go and do a similar thing. This hasn't been done before. It's going to be excellent, and it will be coming sort of summer this year, the first part, and then the rest will be later on in the year. But essentially, we've got some big plans in the pipeline.
So basically, everyone, if you don't already, follow Exotics Keeper across your social media platforms. So I'm guessing you're probably on all of them. I know you're on Instagram. Certainly, I follow you on Instagram and stuff. And YouTube. You're on YouTube and stuff. Follow to keep up to date. And if you haven't already, check out the magazine as well. Because am I right saying that the digital version that's worldwide, isn't it? The digital version.
Yes, it is worldwide. Yeah, there was a period of time when we were doing the survey that we were accepting sort of free, basically subscriptions for participating in the survey. That's expected to change. So if somebody wants to read the magazine, I would get onto the website ASAP, as in within the next couple of weeks, because the way that we distribute things will change, hopefully in preparation to launch physical magazines in the US very soon.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. And but if you're here in the UK, you can subscribe to it physically and get the physical version posted to you every month, sort of thing, and have a nice surprise of what articles are in there, and read up about various species and stuff. And there's a very cool magazine, certainly.
Yeah, well, thank you, Phil. And thank you for having me on the podcast as well. It's been great catching up. I know we've spoken a couple of times in the past or whatever, but actually sit down and talk reptiles and inverts for a couple of hours has been a lot of fun. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. No, and cheers for agreeing to come on there, and we'll have to have it on again at some point. Perhaps, certainly perhaps when any projects have sort of been released, and you're able to perhaps talk about those things and be like, oh yeah, how was that sort of thing.
Yeah, but if I catch you at the conference, and then we'll try and get something lined up for straight after I come back from filming that next project, because that will be some really interesting stuff to share then. So yeah, I look forward to it.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah. Hopefully I'll see you. Yeah, I just need to get my ticket and then I'll be there. Kind of thing. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining and being in chat. Yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic. My next video, once I've finished it, everything, get it up, it'll be released on Wednesday. There's a little terrarium for some really cool isopods. So will be my next one. And I believe Leah should be live on Wednesday, and I believe Scott is live tomorrow. So try and catch those if you can. But until then, we'll see you all next time. Right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.